Whether you're new to IT or already working into IT but never worked on cloud, or already working on cloud but other cloud providers like Amazon AWS or Google Cloud or Oracle Cloud and would like to now learn Microsoft Azure Cloud, then I'm going to cover everything that you need to learn and become good in Microsoft Azure Cloud in this free course. So let's see what you're going to look on this free course. Now, given that this course or free course is roughly around 5 hours, which is a lot, so I've broken down into 10 smaller parts where each part will consist or cover a specific topic within Microsoft Azure Cloud, and we'll go it in a logical manner. So first part, we're going to look or begin with the Azure service landscape. We'll cover touch base with them very high level what these services are, and then we'll begin our first topic, which is Azure Global Infrastructure. Where we'll look at things like how the infrastructure is being laid out on Microsoft Azure Cloud. Where we look at what are the regions, what are the region pair within those regions, and as well as geographies and regions for a regional pair, and then how regions are paired and what is the importance of those pairing from a disaster recovery and high availability point of view. We'll also cover concept like availability zone, update domain, and fault domain, including the sovereign regions, which are government regions and different regions. So that's going to be the part one of this. And once that part one is done, then we'll look at on part two of this series, we're going to look at the resource organization. So to look at from a resource organization point of view, we're going to look at things like what is management groups, which is a logical collection of resources as well. And within that, we'll also look at what is a resource means, and then a resource group, which is collection of resources, and then what these management groups are. We'll also look at subscriptions, and we will be seeing what the subscription means, and you'll be actually be able to create additional subscriptions, which I'm going to cover when we come to that particular point. And then how the management groups, resources, resource groups, and subscriptions are tied to each other. That's what we're going to cover. Then on third part of this 10-part video series covering everything inside this free course, we're going to look at the management tools. And within management tools, we're going to look at the services like Azure Portal, which is a graphical user interface to manage resources. We'll also look at Cloud Shell, which is a command line interface within available under Microsoft Azure Cloud. You also get Azure CLI that you can install on your laptop, on a Windows or Mac laptops. You can and connect your Microsoft Azure Cloud remotely and access them as well. And within that shell also, this Cloud Shell, we are going to look at two, which is PowerShell as well as Bash Shell that are available. And then Azure CLI, which I've mentioned on two parts of that. We'll also look at Azure ARM templates and Azure Biceps, which are part of Azure Cloud Azure, or which is part of infrastructure as a cloud IAC. You might have heard of Terraform as well. We'll cover that. And once that's covered, I think that's going to be the part three of this series. Then part four, we're going to look at everything about compute, which is basically consists of the CPU and the memory part of when you do the processing. And within that, we are going to look at virtual machines as one of the compute, and within virtual machine we'll look at single virtual machine or maybe part of scale set or availability set as well. We'll look at another, which basically this virtual machine is part of infrastructure as a service. That reminds me about if you're complete beginner on cloud, I'm going to give you a little bit later a full free course on Azure Cloud for beginners, something similar to this, but for absolute beginners cloud for absolute beginners will cover things like infrastructure as service and platform as a service. So this virtual machine will part of infrastructure service, but then you have platform as a service where you have Azure App Services, Azure Container Services, Azure Kubernetes Services, Azure Functions, which is a serverless version, and then Azure Virtual Desktop. We'll see what these means. That's going to be on day 4 or part 4. Then part 5th is going to be all about networking. So let me go back here. So this is what I was talking about. These are the different services from a compute, which is virtual machines, scale sets, availability set, and then we'll tell you or we'll even create one virtual machine so you can see how to do that as well. And then our Azure virtual instances as well, and containers and Kubernetes and functions and so on. Then we're going to look at the networking part, and this is where I think if you are planning, pay special attention if you're trying to become an architect, or if you're going or planning to go for a more advanced, maybe multi-cloud as well, networking plays a very key role. And that is where we're going to look at the whole networking things like virtual network, or subnets, gateways, load balancers, connectivity with on-premise like VPN, fast connect, and so on. So things like VNet. Which VNet is something similar to VPC or virtual private cloud if you're coming from a um, AWS background, or VCN, Virtual Cloud Network from an Oracle Cloud Network as well. We'll also look at virtual network or Azure Cloud Network or Azure Network Peering, which is a VNet peering. We'll also look at VPN, Virtual Private Network, VPN, and within VPN, there are two types, point to point and point to site, or site to site and point to site. We'll look at these two VPNs. And then Azure Express Route, which is a dedicated pipe, and then how that is being used to connect with, for example, AWS side with on AWS side Direct Connect for your multi-cloud environments integrations as well. We'll also look at DNS and the load balancers available on Microsoft Azure Cloud. Also look at from firewall, which is a Microsoft Azure firewall, which is a firewall implementation on Azure Cloud. But we'll also look at other firewall, which is a network security group, which is a network level firewall that you will see, which is not actually network level firewall. We'll come to that point. I'll cover that when we come to that section as well. Then we are going to look at the storage section, and within storage, we are going to look at, I think that's going to be our days or part 6, and we will look at blob, tables, queues, and then Azure files, which is an implementation or which will support protocols like SMB and NFS if you shared a file system across multiple machines. We'll also look at virtual machines disks, which can be associated to the VMs that we saw earlier, and then Azure Data Lake Storage ADLS or Azure Data Lake ADLS Generation 2 for we'll cover that on a data engineering part later on this. And then we'll also cover Azure storage tiers, which is going to be the cold, hot, and archive, the data box to ship the data, and then file management copy, which is or file management operations like AZ copy or Azure Storage Explorer and file sync. And from there, we are going to go into the on day 7, we're going to look at or part 7, we're going to look at Entra ID, which is an Azure Active Directory for storing your users, groups, roles, policies, and role-based access control, all those things on or conditional access, etc. on the Azure cloud environment. We'll look at which is now rebranded as Entra ID, which is earlier Azure Active Directory. We'll look at Azure Active Directory Connect, MFA, which is a multi-factor authentication, and then external identity, which is B2B and B2C. We'll also look at, as I said, conditional access, role-based access control, and Microsoft Defender. And there is a licenses in Entra ID, which is a P1, P2 licenses. We'll talk about that as well. And that will take us to the part 8 of this, or day 8 or part 8 of this full free course on Microsoft Azure Cloud. We'll be looking at the cost management and the billing. We'll look at Azure cost management, Azure marketplace, price calculator, billing, and how tax help in the billing. And then day 9 or part 9 is all going to be about governance, compliance, and monitoring. And that is where we look at Azure policy, blueprints, Azure logs, service trust pilot, Azure advisor, and then Azure service health monitor and Azure alert as well. And the 10th part is going to be all about Azure certifications, and that's where we're going to look at Azure infrastructure certificate. And there are 3 different levels, which is a foundation, associate, and expert level, which is AZ900. I'll talk about these certifications as well as the data and AI ML certification. Now, if you're might be noticing, this doesn't involve, this is all about infrastructure, covering storage, compute, networking, and all high availability, disaster recovery, all those things. This doesn't include data part, which is data engineering. I have purposefully kept separate because that's a separate thing coming. If you're interested about hearing more about data engineering or data, which is AI, machine learning, and data, that's a completely separate track, which will be talking about this part on B part here later on a separate series. So let me know about that if you're interested. So just to look at, these are the things which we're going to cover, which I mentioned about from a storage point of view. These are the storage options that you have, and then we go on Azure Entra ID, and there's a lot to coming as well. Now, I'll also give you some background in terms of what you should be careful, or what should be few things about this series or this whole 10-part video series full course. First and most important is that it's being taken from a program that we run, which is a job-oriented program. So day one, we cover all about basics. So this is all about entire overview about the whole Azure cloud. So this clip has been taken from that day one. So there might be some references about question answers and people discussing about it. So just to ignore, or I would suggest you to pay special attention because those questions are golden nuggets. And if you have any questions like that, leave them in the comment section if as you're going and discussing and listening those. Also, when someone is asking the question in that part, before you listen to the answer, just see if you can answer if you're already working on Azure or other cloud and see how it's being implemented on. So highly recommended to listen to the question answers. Very important. Now, second also mentioned is that prior to that, if you're complete beginner or in this part, in this especially the first 2-3 part days or 2-3 sessions, we're going to talk about a lot about high availability, disaster recovery, latency, redundancy, scalability, elasticity, and also cloud service model, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, or deployment model, public private hybrid. So if you have not watched that, we have already done a video in past, which is a full course, full-fledged course from our again cloud programs that we run. That basically is available on k21academy.com/cloud01. It's also available in YouTube, but it's difficult for me to remember YouTube. So we have linked on our blog, which is k21academy.com/cloud01. That's going to cover everything. So I think it's very detailed program about cloud for absolute beginners. Let me show it to you. I think you'll see a screenshot like this on YouTube channel that we have done cloud for beginners. And there we're going to cover all the service comparisons. Plus, we'll also cover shared responsibility model in that video about, and I think during the security, I'm going to cover shared security responsibility model from a security point of view. We'll look at that as well. And also I've done the cloud comparison in that beginners course. So make sure if you're interested, or highly recommend you if you're new to cloud, go through that full course, k21academy.com/cloud01 as well. Now, if feel free to play this if you think we are going at a slow pace. Feel free to watch it at 1.5x or 2x as well. And also, few action item to you before we go to the part or day one or part one of this video series. Um, if you want to get notified, because I'm releasing almost on every day, Monday to Friday, we'll be releasing this on a specific time. And if you want to get notified, or in future to get notified of videos like that, get a WhatsApp announcement, join a WhatsApp community we do, which is a k21academy.com/Azure WA. You'll be redirected to a WhatsApp group. If you're not using WhatsApp, it's highly recommended to for communication or chat with your friends and colleagues. Download that and WhatsApp, and then go to this URL. It will take you to the WhatsApp community so that you get notified. We constantly send more useful content like that. Also, as I said, watch for by going to the cloud for beginners. And final thing before I go and look at this is do share. If you really like this video, do share with your friends, colleagues, and we learn in a group. And in future, we'll have more such topics as well. Now, if you're new to this channel or have never heard from me, very quickly, I have close to now 2.5 decades of IT experience and more than now a decade in cloud. And last 5 years had been multi-cloud, working on AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, and cloud native like DevOps, containers, and Kubernetes as well. Now, my motto is that constant learning. And that's what has helped me to earn when I started my career with merely less than $100 a month, to then coming to here in UK back in 2004, earning 425 pounds a day to 500, 700, 900, 1200 pounds a day. Now I have a liberty and flexibility to work when I want to work, who I want to work with as well. And my objective is that to provide so much value, and I also want to be transparent with you. I also run a more in-depth programs and courses which will help you to definitely get a job and high-paying job, as well as get certified as well. And my objective is that when you see the value, maybe few percent, 1 or 2% of you guys want to go deeper and learn better on these job-oriented programs with us, with experts. So with that, without spending any further time, let's look at the global infrastructure. And towards the end, I'm going to talk about and give you some of my additional bits as well. So let's look at global infrastructure from one of our Azure experts on this part one of this series.
So this is basically a kind of high-end service landscape where we do have variety of services available across the globe, right? Microsoft is offering their particular services under their particular cloud platform, and we can consume those particular services for our particular business point of view. We can use like, okay, compute, network, storage, which are fall into the criteria of infrastructure as a service. We can also utilize under compute, we can consider like, okay, virtual machine, app service, containerization, serverless, those are some of the particular services maybe we can categorize under compute. So it is like a kind of approach where we can identify that what sort of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service we wanted to deploy, and according to that we can pick and choose that specific environment, and then you will be able to configure and maintain those activity. So cloud for everyone, being a be it whatever your role play, if you're coming from identity background, if you're coming from network background, if you're coming from developer background, testing background, if you're coming from solution architect, enterprise architect, whatever the role play you have, if you're coming with SRE, site reliable engineer, or probably maybe you might have heard about DevOps role, right? So what is your role play? Based on that you have all the different service criteria available, and you can use those particular components and services for your particular day-to-day activity, what we are like looking at it. So we need to plan, or maybe you can say we need to work out with the kind of environment or kind of services where we can pick and choose and work with those particular service what we are like looking at it. So that's basically a kind of high level service landscape. If I wanted to take a look at it in portal point of view, so here, if you see, when I go to the create resource, right? So under create resource, we do have some particular categorization available, which starts from AI machine learning, goes up to web. So different particular categorization is there, and you will get different services belong to those category. It may be possible that some service may get overlap in some of the other category as well, if they belongs to. Then in that case, we can use them. Say, for example, compute can overlap somewhere on integration or somewhere ITSM or any other particular like area. So it is something, whenever we are planning to work with any of these services, you may have this particular criteria to be available, and based on this particular criteria, you can simplify or provision your services altogether in terms of cloud. So here we do have those platform services, infrastructure services available as a part of it. And with the help of that particular service criteria and all of that, we will be able to manage and work with those environment the way it is expected from the cloud point of view, right? So that's basically the kind of high level service criteria what we have. Now, along with this, we do have some of the Azure global infrastructure. Now, when we are starting with the global infrastructure, it starts with, first of all, with the region, okay? Whenever we are planning to get started, so it starts with probably you can say region. Now here, let me take you to the Azure portal only. So here, Microsoft is offering you, this is the latest update, or maybe you can say they have updated site with some options. Now, my first question, and the another question to all of you is that whenever we are planning to select any region, what is your region selection criteria? Any guess?
I mean, for example, if I'm in the US, so I can select the US number.
Okay. If I'm
Depend
in
on the
US,
region
then
you
I will
want to
select.
work with.
Okay, yes, yes. What else? What else?
Stability, resources,
Okay. Stability, close to your location. Very good point.
High,
Latency.
av-
So
high availability and latency.
high availability and latency. Okay. So here, if I wanted to define, first one is basically region selection criteria, right? Very good point. Cost is also one of the important point. So here there are a couple of elements which we can, I'll label it out. So first criteria is region selection criteria depends on customer base location, right? To avoid latency. So we wanted that where our customer based out of, where we wanted to serve this particular services, and then accordingly we wanted to offer this particular service from the cloud perspective. So in that scenario, based on the customer based location, we can avoid the latency and we can provide that particular services to the nearest location of the customer where they wanted to connect and access, right? So that's basically one of the criteria. Second criteria is basically, I see like many of you guys have mentioned that high availability. So high availability is something probably I can define it as an redundancy. I will explain that what is redundancy and all that. What does that mean and how we need to take it in designing our solution or implementing our solution in cloud point of view. Right. So here customer based location is one of the criteria. Second criteria I can say service availability. Now, if Microsoft is offering, if you see this is like a globe, what I mean, they have created some nice interactive UI in Azure where they are offering their service. So if you see this is the globe worldwide, they are running satellites. This white line basically goes under the sea, undersea cable with fiber optics cable connected across their data centers. And worldwide, they have established their particular communication to keep their particular infrastructure and data center connectivity and services up and running. So here, whenever we are planning to select our region, right, based on your current location, it will start showing you like, okay, where this region, when this region got established, what is the base location? Of course, they will not give you complete address, but they will give you like what is the base location and all. Do they have availability zone, whether it is there or not, whether it's coming soon, or if some region used to nearby availability zone, they do not have options to like have availability zone in place, right? So whenever we are planning to go through with region selection criteria, along with base location and all, we need to check that what is our service availability, because since it's like 60 plus region across the globe, it may be possible that service provider may not release all the services generally available in all the region, right? So there are two type of services we get it. One is in preview and second is GA. GA stands for generally available. Preview services, we should use it only up to the POC, or maybe if you are planning to have a minimum viable product or proof of concepts, if you are planning to create, then only you should use it. Or for R&D purpose, you should use your preview services. But when it comes to GA, generally available services, we should use it for our production environment because they are production ready and they do not have any issues in terms of consuming those particular services in our day-to-day environment what we have. So whenever we are planning to go through with our environment, whenever we are planning to go through with our particular services and criteria, we can simply select this particular service availability. Now, this services, as I said, it may be possible due to infrastructure limitations, due to the launch of the new services. It may be released in some region only, not all of the region. So you may have to wait for that service availability in that respective region. After that, only you can consume or you can start using that service in that respective region. Of course, I mean you are allowed to provision service in other region where it is available, but yeah, maybe you need to take care of your data compliance and all, right? So my third point is basically compliance.
Sir,
Whenever you are,
what do you mean
yeah,
by
go
the
ahead.
avoid latency? I mean, what does it mean by
So
location
avoid
tool?
latency is basically all about the performance of your services. Let's imagine if I'm sitting somewhere, let's assume that I'm sitting somewhere in India and my service is hosted somewhere in US. Then there will be some particular slow response in my service request response because it is going over the internet. It will go to all the way to US server and then come back to India server, and that way it will be the latency. So avoid latency is basically the request response time. So that's where we prefer that, okay, if my customer is based out of India, then we should host service nearby India as well so that they can get service access faster comparative to US when they request and response back and all that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Now here, when it comes to compliance, so compliance is one of the primary requirement for nowadays almost all the different industries, right? So I was giving scenario, I was talking about that restaurant chain which I work for, right? So nowadays, we all know that almost all restaurant outlet they came up with online payment system, correct? So if you want to place an order, your food items and all of that, so you have online applications and services where you can place an order and you can pay online, and then they ask for some detail like your maybe debit card, credit card, your bank details, or whatever the payment system you have. They might ask those details and then you perform your payment on top of it, right? So that is one of the option. So when I was working for this particular project, it was migration project from on-premise data center to Azure. So the customer had a PCI compliance requirement. PCI compliance means payment card interface. So whenever we are planning to take online payment, then this is the compliance set by the banking sectors, where what all the details the service provider can store of their customers when they make a payment, right? To protect their particular banking details, their accounts, and all of that. They are supposed to reveal that what all the data they are capturing. So in that case, earlier it was happening that a lot of fraud was happening online, right? So now the PCI compliance basically regulate those online payment system, and then every service provider who accept the online payment, they are supposed to follow that particular PCI compliance. So in line, there are many different government compliances are there, like GDPR, or maybe you can say EU compliances, or maybe banking has their own compliance, HIPAA compliance and all that, right? PCI, FISMA and all. So these are some of the compliance which we need to take care whenever we are going through with some data region selection. So we want data residency in that particular same region itself because of the compliance criteria, right? So whenever you are selecting your region, you have to make sure that you follow this particular compliance criteria, and accordingly you can select your region. The fourth criteria is pricing. Now, pricing plays an important role at the end because we wanted that we want that one of the cost-effective solution up and running in cloud, and we need to consider the pricing criteria accordingly, right? So here, pricing is one of the particular unit I can say which may vary region to region. Why is that so? I mean, maybe the argument comes in a way that okay, I mean, Microsoft is only offering that service, then why pricing is different in all the different region, right? So in that particular scenario, here I can say pricing may differ region to region. The reason behind that is the underlying infrastructure setup cost, real estate cost, and the government taxes. Those are the like couple of elements impact to your pricing. So in that case, the pricing may differ from region to region, and then accordingly, you have your particular services available. So pricing is also one of the criteria we can consider. The other criteria is basically redundancy, right? So redundancy is basically here we can think of in terms of availability of the services, which we are going to talk in a while in upcoming slide. So redundancy is more, you can say, preferred option for any cloud service provider, that whenever you are offering your services, it has to be available in particular outages, right? So there are different approach, or maybe there are like maybe I can say there are many reasons your services may go down. It may go down because of probably you can say due to you can say hardware failure, network failure, power failure, this got failed, right? Or if is there any patching or security updates are getting released to the servers or OS and all that, or firmware updates are happening at the hardware level and all that. So in that particular scenario, these particular kind of like updates basically uh, like bring your services down. and during that time frame we wanted redundancy to be covered up for our services. So we design our solution in a way with backup planning, right? Simple example, like if you consider at our home itself, whenever we are looking for electricity, whenever we are looking for network and all that, so we keep backup, right? If electricity goes down due to the service provider failure, maybe we can have inverters or battery backup or power backup in place so that we can keep our services up and running. So that is the alternative. That's a backup planning, right? Similarly, like network, probably I can say maybe I can purchase a particular bandwidth, a well bandwidth provider provided services for my internet consumption. Maybe if that goes down, I have my mobile data which I can use it to interact with my services as well. So it's more about like redundancy. That redundancy basically help you out to design your solution in a way where you can keep your services up and running, and then accordingly you will be able to plan your particular environment, right? So that's basically the criteria. Whenever we are planning with our region selection, probably we can simply go ahead with this particular selection criteria, and then accordingly we can plan those activity. So there's a question in chat. Santosh says, hope compliance is same for all region. Yes, Santosh, wherever the generic compliance applicable to worldwide, they all are same. Only particular region has a particular compliance, then maybe like cloud service provider may prefer to make sure that those compliances also taken care into that region, so that the enterprises who all are like they wanted to move their services from on-prem to cloud, then they can define those particular compliances also into that cloud service offerings as well. So of course, most of the standard compliances are available globally. If in case any region specific or country specific compliances are there and they prefer that those compliances should be mapped in cloud, then maybe cloud service provider also go for such compliances to be made available for that country, and then they offer their particular services also. Yeah, I hope that helps your answer to your question. So whenever we are planning with our particular cloud driven activities and all, here, redundancy point of view, we will get region pairing as well. Okay. So what do you mean by region pairing? So region pairing is one of the redundancy feature offered in cloud, especially only in Azure, not in other like AWS and Google Cloud. You will not hear about region pairing. So here, region pairing is something offered by Microsoft. So I just now showed that globe connected via fiber optic cables and all that. So what Microsoft did, they have created a particular region pairing between primary region and the most nearby region, and they paired with each other via fiber optic cable. So maybe you can say hundreds of thousands of miles away, those particular regions are located from each other, and they are connected with that particular network cable. So the advantage is that in case of, let's say, US East paired with US West, right? So, or West US paired with East US, that way at least the region pairing will be there. So in that scenario, what will happen if in case, let's say East US goes down, then you have your particular data got sync or async in paired region from where you can restore your data back, and then you can keep your particular services up and running, right? So region pairing is one of the criteria which is available in Azure, which helps you to add one more additional, you can say a particular redundancy layer, which helps you to protect or secure your particular environment on top of it. So it's more about whenever you are planning or you wanted to go ahead with some sort of like service planning and management and operations in place, then I think this is basically a kind of options maybe we can think through. So region pairing is also one of the criteria provided by Azure, and we can select that how you want to leverage this particular region pairing, right? So that is something you can decide, and then accordingly your data may get stored somewhere, and then you will get the region level failure to be covered up under that particular scenario. So whenever you are having services to be up and running, here the cloud service provider offers you a kind of redundancy mechanism starting from single server goes up to multi-region kind of option, and in between you can take care of redundancy according to your business use case, whatever you have. It may be possible that you may require particular you may require like looking at your business critical problem statement, you may require very high redundancy. Sometimes you may require like low redundancy as well. So it is completely up to us that what sort of redundancy we are expecting, and then accordingly we can simply plan and manage and work or offer those particular services altogether, and then you will be able to like go through with those component what we are like looking at it. So it's more about like planning and working with the specific services what we are like looking at it, and then accordingly you may simply offer those particular services from the service provider, right? So this is something from the region pairing point of view. So let me know if you have any queries or questions so far before moving further.
Sir, I have a question.
Mhm.
So basically, like Netflix has a, storage. So in India and in USA, so do they need to buy the two separate region, or they work with the one region
They have to buy two separate regions
for the same
because
purpose?
US because US has a different compliance, India has a different compliance. You will not be able to see the content provided in US will be available in India, or India content may be not available in US. So depend compliance point of view also, and as well as user latency point of view also, there might be a two different content service they are providing from different locations.
Okay, thank you.
So here the region pairing is one of the criteria where we can pair the region and we can have some sort of redundancy to be taken care into the data point of view. Now, this is something we can use it for our disaster recovery planning as well, DR, or high availability and disaster recovery. So maybe you can think of like looking at this particular link. Okay, as per the Microsoft guideline, here if you see, they are providing you like, okay, uh, if it's India, then what all the regions available, what all the availability zones available. If I go to Asia Pacific, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, right? So New Zealand or different particular locations are there. So in that particular case, some of them are coming soon, some of them are exist. So accordingly, we can have our infrastructure and services to be hosted, and that way at least you can have a disaster recovery and other solution to be planned in place. So this is like a kind of option available. Now, question comes in mind that what is availability zone? Okay. So availability zone, we can consider it as in data center. Okay, it is translated into data center. So here, let's understand this way. It will become easy for all of you to understand. So usually, what is happening? We have a particular region. Okay, this region, let's consider as in East US. So under this region, we can have data center. Okay, that data center is known as availability zone, or it is also known as AZs. Okay, so if you have a single availability zone, single data center, then there are high chances that I mean, if it's a single server, then it's fine. Maybe you will be able to restore your services to another server. But let's say if whole data center only goes down, then what will happen? So in that case, cloud service providers started offering availability zones. So availability zones basically protects your services against the data center level failure. So you can have minimum two, maximum three availability zone, depend on the service provider. Okay. So it may be possible that every cloud service provider, they might offer two or three data center in that respective region, and then accordingly you will be able to host your services. So it may be possible that you can have one server hosted somewhere in you can say first availability zone. You can have another server hosted in second availability zone, so that is your data center only, and third one in third. So if my first data center goes down, or my first AZs goes down, availability zone goes down, then I have another availability zone who basically take care of my services, and it will offer you a kind of option, or maybe you can say a kind of environment to be available to be taken care into the consideration, and then it will keep your particular services up and running from the rest of the availability zone as well. So it's more about SLA. How many of you have heard about SLA? What do you mean by SLA? Maybe you can mention in chat or speak up as well.
Service,
Service
Service
level
level
agreement.
aggregator.
yeah.
Correct. So it's like service level agreement. So basically, what does that mean, service level agreement? Service level agreement is more about what we have mutually understood. We understood the particular criteria about outages, and according to that criteria, we mutually agree that if this service goes down, or if the data is not available for so and so time frame, or service is not available for so and so time frame, then we are okay. So that's basically a mutual concern basically taken care by the service provider, and then they offer their particular solutions, or they design their solution accordingly. So basically, we need to identify that what sort of SLA we are looking at it, and accordingly we can plan our particular solution offering in that place. If customer is not okay, like okay, I mean my SLA and my cost is like bit lower, I'm not looking for that great or higher SLA. So it's fine. I mean, if my all servers are hosted somewhere in single data center, and if that data center is not available, I'm okay with that, right? So it is completely up to the customer's SLA requirement, the business criticality, and then accordingly we can design and implement our solution in that case. So availability zone basically part of your region, and it will eliminate the dependency of single data center level failure, and that way at least you can manage your services accordingly. We will talk about this particular concept more in detail in virtual machine, because there I will explain this particular in thoroughly. So you will get to know that okay, oh yeah, now we have hosted in availability set or availability zone, and how these things are working and all that. So that time we will discuss more in detail. Right now this is just for your understanding that what do you mean by redundancy at region level, at data center level, how that this works and all. Now imagine if this whole if whole region goes down, then what will happen? Right now we are talking about only data center, but what if like East US only goes down, then what we need to do? So in that case, basically we come up with the selection criteria, or maybe the service deployment criteria, in a way that my resources basically deployed in multi-region, okay, where I can have a particular identical environment available across the region. And here, what I'm expecting that I have minimum 2 region where I have my services up and running. Okay. So what will happen in that particular case? I have my particular primary region, right? And this will be my secondary region, or I can say failure region, or failover region, probably it will be proper word. So here I can say this will be my failover region. So I can design my particular solution in a way that will help me in terms of taking care of my particular solutions and environment, and I can take care of that particular failover scenario across the environment, whatever we do have. So whenever we are planning to identify the services, we need to visualize that how this particular environment works, and then accordingly, you will be able to design your particular SLA. You can host your particular services accordingly, and you can keep those services up and running for your end customer, and then it will be available for your customers to connect and access those services in place. Make sense? Any queries or question in availability zone? In a simple and layman language, availability zones are nothing, but it's a kind of data center. It's more than one data center under single region so that you can eliminate the dependency of single data center level failure, and you can keep your services up and running in nearby data centers so that you don't have to invest money behind setting up another data center on your own, right? It is something already there. You just need to leverage the service. They are interconnected, and then it will become easy for you to move your data, service, availability, redundancy, and all of that particular activity amongst these particular locations. Make sense? So let me know if you have any queries or questions on AZ's region pairing. If no questions, then we can move forward with further options. So just wanted to check with people like, are we good? I mean, the pace, the discussions and the flow, what we are going through. So
So,
my agenda for the first, yeah, I'll come to your question. My
so what is
agenda,
the
sorry, go ahead.
I said, what is the advantage of region pair, the advantage and disadvantage?
Okay, sure. I'll come to that question. Yeah. So my intention for the today's session, the cloud fundamental, cloud basic, is to bring all of you on the same page and give you a kind of better understanding of Azure offering. And then from the next session onwards, we will deep dive, explore more advanced concepts, discuss those concepts, and then it will help you to kickstart your particular cloud journey. Yeah. So I wanted, whenever I use these particular technical jargon in my upcoming session, I hope you guys must be familiar with those technical jargon, and then it will become easy for all of you to pick up during that time frame, right? So that is what my intention in this particular first module. So I'm taking some time. I know, I mean, sometimes theory may get a little bit bored, but yeah, I mean, if you really understand and thoroughly enjoy it, then I think it will become easy for all of you to pick up upcoming hands-on and many particular different concepts. Yeah. So I just wanted your input, all of you, that so far, what is your particular input about the pace, the concepts, and the examples, analogy scenario? If all good, then we are good to go ahead. And if in case anything you feel that, oh yeah, something, if you can explain more or this, that, probably I can try to accommodate that as well. Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, coming back to the question of Michael, that what is the advantage or disadvantage of region pairing? Okay. So first thing in place, the advantages I already mentioned, that the advantage is basically disaster recovery. That if you have your primary region where your services are up and running, and if the primary region goes down due to any catastrophic event, or maybe network outage, power outage, or any incident happens in your primary region, and then your primary region goes down and your services are unavailable. So in that case, if you have region pair, then your data asynchronously replicated into that region. So with minimal data loss, you can keep your services up and running, right? So that way, at least you can consider the advantage of region pairing. Now, disadvantage, I can say the cost wise, because your data going out from one region to another region, and in that case your cost may get increased. So that is only one of the problem statement I see, but other than that I don't think so any specific disadvantage of region pairing, because it will basically protects you against those kind of like outages and keep your business continuity scenario under that particular options. So first, you can define your disaster planning within the region itself using availability zone. And if you have a business criticality solution where you think that, okay, I mean, region pairing is something required where you want your data to go outside of other region, and in case of outage occur, then probably I can restore my services back from that region and then keep my particular environment to be up and running. So I can consider this way that rather disadvantage from the pricing point of view, there are more advantages from the business continuity point of view. So again, I mean, as I said, it is completely organization to organization how they prefer and what is their selection criteria, they may go ahead with that option. But yeah, in general, these are some of the options probably we can think through. I hope that answers your question, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Now here we do have this update and fault domain. Yeah. So I was talking about this redundancy options, right? So when it comes to cloud, uh, fault domain, update domain, it's a kind of technical component of my virtual machine. Right now, I'll only explain this way. We have, I'll come to this particular topic later when it comes to virtual machine concept. There, I will explain this particular fault domain, update domain thoroughly. And I will give you insight that, okay, what is the significance of this two particular element and how Microsoft basically provide you a high availability towards your services, right? So a lot of people get confused between HA and DR, high availability and disaster recovery, right? So how do you guys consider that? What is the difference between HA and what is the difference between DR? Or they are same? What do you think? What is HA, high availability, and what is disaster recovery, DR? What do you think? What is HA and what is DR? And why we should worry about it? What
DR
is
is
your thought
it's
process?
like a
Yeah, go
backup.
ahead.
I mean, DR
DR
is
is
like a
backup,
backup.
okay?
And the high availability means if you need anything, you will get instantly.
If you need anything, you will get instantly. So in that DR, we don't get it. Does it mean?
DR is like a kind of backup. If disaster recovery, you can get it
Hmm.
from the other region. Like if anything happen in the one region, you will get the story from the other region. But the high availability
Okay.
means, like for example, I'm in the networking. So in networking, if the one switch is getting the power from two different sources, if the one source goes down, so they will get the power from the like UPS. That's called
Okay.
the network.
Okay.
See,
Okay.
hi, I have an answer for this. Hi, my name is
Sure.
Jaya. And
Yeah, go ahead.
see, disaster recovery is something like which is very much unprecedented. Say something happened with the weather, and then in the region there is something happened. Then this region pairing, or else availability zone pairing is going to help. But when it comes to the high availability, it is like you have two different sets of the same similar replication, and if there is something that is happening, like one a particular server is down, and immediately you want to bring it up, it's not something like a huge disaster. It's something which is like controllable within the same kind of regions. But when it comes to the disaster recovery, it can go higher than the disasters can go higher than the normal kind of outages, right? So that's what my understanding is.
Yes, and very good answer, Jaya. Thanks, thanks. So here I can say, as Jaya rightly mentioned, that so according to me, I mean, so okay, so I mean, when I ask questions, so think this way, and I always consider this way that no answer is wrong or right. It's all about our perspective, right? So the way I think about HADR, so they both complements each other. The high availability and disaster recovery complements each other. How come? So high availability is something within the region or within the particular periphery or circumstances. We wanted that in case of traffic goes high, in case of more volume required to keep that services up and running, then in that case, we provision multiple instance, we keep those particular components like available. So in that particular scenario, the high availability is that you will not run out of shortage of those services, and they are like readily available to like take care of your particular incoming traffic and all. So in general, high availability is something I can say it's a kind of service availability, making sure the service availability in particular high traffic volume what we have. Now it will also cover up a part of disaster as well, right? As Jaya also rightly mentioned that we provision at least minimum two server. If you keep only one server, then what will happen? As we earlier discussed that, okay, I mean, if only single server, then definitely, I mean, your services may go down and it will be the bigger outage in that particular case. But if you keep at least minimum two server, then in that case, what will happen in high volume of traffic, if one server CPU usage goes high or one service gets overloaded, the other services there, the identical services there, which take care of your particular load and share that load amongst with each other. So high availability is more about making sure that you keep your business going on by adding more number of instance, by adding more number of capacity behind the scene with your services. Make sense? Whereas disaster recovery, it starts from, as I said, like it starts along with even HA as well. That why you added two server, because the purpose of that particular server adding is that you know that okay, something if going wrong with my single instance, then I have some particular backup plan. I have added another instance with identical environment so that it will be available and then we can serve the traffic or we can serve the purpose. So in that scenario, disaster, we are starting from different level. In fact, even sorry, I didn't get the name. I mean, maybe when you guys like log in, just try to give a proper name. I didn't get your name, MUHDB. Sorry, I didn't get your name. So maybe if you can like type your name properly, then it will be easy for me to understand. So here, when we have a disaster recovery, right? So as mentioned that okay, networking scenario that okay, we can have four different power cable supports that networking. So in that particular case, if one power source goes down, then you have alternatives from where you can get your particular power backup available. So that's basically a backup planning that in case anything goes wrong, be it network, data, compute, whatever it is, right? So HA by default comes along with compute backup, right? When it comes to storage, network, and other particular components, we design it in a way so that you will be able to manage your disaster and then you can restore your particular service. Now, there are impact of disaster, maybe a minimal or maximum, and accordingly we can plan our services and solutions altogether. So I always consider this way that HADR both complements each other in terms of supporting and keeping your services or business up and running, right? So in that scenario, uh, this is something which I just now mentioned some time back, like two type of outages we always get it in our environment. One is logical physical breakdown and second is logical downtime. Physical breakdown is basically a complete data center go starting from server, forget about data center, starting from your power, network, disks, storage, your compute, whatever get fail, then your service stops getting access, right? So it's your physical, even server rack. If I go one by one step above, like your server, your particular server rack, your data center or container, wherever that service is like hosted and all of that. So those things is basically fall into the criteria of physical outage. Whereas logical outage is basically the like man-made, probably I can say, maybe due to a high bandwidth hitting to that server, it's going down, or probably you can say the patch and update is happening to the firmware updates and all that. So those things probably we can consider it as an logical update. So in that case, this fault domain, update domain, fault domain belongs to physical outage of my services. Update domain belongs to logical downtime of my service. If you understand that way, it will become easy for you to remember this concept. Fault domain, physical outage, update domain, logical downtime. So based on that, we design and plan our services. Now let's imagine in your server infrastructure, you have two server only and they both server are hosted in the same server rack. Then what will happen if your server rack goes down? Then you will lose both the servers, correct? So you want that okay, if I have two server, then both server will be hosted in two different server rack. So in case one server rack goes down, I have another server rack which keep my services up and running. So that way you can distribute your physical downtime of your services and then you can have that particular availability of your services will be managed. So that is something we can think through from the fault domain. Whereas update domain. Now let's imagine that firmware is started getting update to the underlying hardware. Then what will happen if both server updates started together? Then you will lose both the server, correct? So I wanted that at a time one server will start getting update, and one server is getting update, another server is like serving the traffic. And once that is getting updated, it will release back into the system, and the next server will go on. So it will be more about like planning and designing your particular infrastructure outages. You can identify at different level and different layer, and then accordingly you can design your particular solution and services for your customer. So most of the time when we work for like any solutions, right, RFPs and all, how many of you have heard about RFP? What is RFP? So I will try to throw all these jargon, guys, like, because whatever I have done in my overall work experience, I will try to share those with you. So please bear with me, and I will try to throw those jargons. And if you're familiar, maybe you can mention. If not, then I will help you to understand that. Yeah. Okay. Jaya says request for proposal. Correct. So RFP. So there are many names: RFP, RFI, RFQ. A lot of people are using different names, right? So usually RFP, all these particular technical jargon, these things basically relative to the project related activity. When enterprise come to you and ask you that, hey, we are looking for this RFP to be taken care by the technical guy or technical folks, then in that particular case, you will respond to that particular query. So most of the time customers comes and ask you that, hey, what SLA you will give me? Right? How you gonna make sure that you will take care of outages and keep my services up and running? Then in that case, you are supposed to come up with this particular activity, and then according to that, you will be able to provide those particular solutions, and then you can design and implement services altogether. Yeah. So fault domain, update domain, availability zone, region pairing, these are some of the options basically provided in Microsoft Azure, which helps you out to protect your services, protect your data, keep your application infrastructure up and running, and then you can design your solution according to the SLA required for the environment what we are like looking at it. Yeah. So let me know if you have any queries or questions before moving to this particular further region related discussion. Let me know in case any queries or questions so far. Okay, there's a question, are all the services available in all regions? If not, how HA will be achieved, or HA only for infra? So, as I mentioned earlier, that all services may not be available in all region. It is completely depend on cloud service provider. If service is only available in respective region, then you need to design your HA accordingly, right? So that is something we need to plan, and we need to create those service availability within that environment. And HA belongs to not just only infra, it's just about service availability. That when the demand goes high, and under that high demand, how your service is going to be like available, and then it will basically take care of those particular high traffic or high volume, and then it will survive during that time frame. So high availability is making sure to take care of your load and serve the purpose of that particular time frame. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, MK. Any other queries or question, guys, before moving to the next option? Oops, sorry. So there are some of the government regions as well. So I was working for one of the like solution, which was semi-government project from the US, and their primary requirement was, so they are into shipping business. Okay. So they are like having their ships moving from one country to another country, and they wanted to monitor their shipping related activities. They wanted to track their ship. They wanted to track the maintenance work of that ship and different anomalies, different engine engine parts, and many things are like on that ship. So they wanted to collect those data and manage the overall operations of that particular ship. Now, since it was a government project, So we cannot deploy services somewhere in public cloud because that is something kind of compliance requirement. So what service provider started, they created a separate cloud for government agencies as well. So public cloud and government cloud, they both are separate. And in that particular case, if we are looking at any particular services, right, to be hosted for the government cloud, then of course, I mean, there might be a difference in that case. There are a couple of services available in government cloud. There are a couple of services may not be available. So we need to check when we go for that particular subscription for the, especially for the government cloud, and then accordingly, we will get those access or options to be available as a part of it. So we need to identify that where we are planning to host our solution and services, and then accordingly we can plan and manage and go through with those activity into the system, right? So that's basically the option. Maybe we can get it from the region point of view.
Well, that was our expert, and thank you so much for staying with us till the end of the video. Now all you have to do is just click the link in the description below, or if you are just starting out, just type k21academy.com/azure02. Now all you have to do is just enter name, enter email ID, enter phone number, and click on register now, and you will be redirected to this page. You can also add this to your Google Calendar or Apple Calendar, and I promise this is something that you don't want to miss. So go ahead, click on the link and step into the world where learning knows no boundaries. Till then, keep enjoying. I'll see you in the next video.
Well, that was part one of a 10-part video series taken from a day one of Azure Job-Oriented Bootcamp. Now, tomorrow, that is part two, we are going to look at the resource management. We'll be looking at resources, resource group, management groups, and other things that you need to know, and everything that you need to know about, or subscriptions about resource and resource management as well. Now, as I said at the start of as well, that if you have not yet gone through, make sure, or if you're new to cloud basics, or if not gone through, go and watch this cloud basics, k21academy.com/cloud01. On that post, you will have a video, a full-fledged video talking about all the cloud service model, deployment model, and a lot more on basic cloud characteristic. You'll definitely going to love that as well. And also, make sure subscribe our WhatsApp group, which is k21academy.com/Azure WA. And yeah, that's pretty much. And if you're watching that in future, I'm going to put all these 10 videos in a playlist. So you'll be seeing that uh, immediately after this. Go and watch all, do binge watching. And if you have any questions, queries, do let me know at the comment section. So I'll make sure that you get a response for that. Yeah, apart from that, if you have any other questions, any queries, do let as well. And also what you want to see in future videos, do comment as well. And I'll see you tomorrow.